Security VIP is the official podcast of the security industry, from manufacturers to end users and everything in between. Security VIP is your home for nothing but the truth.
You think you know me?
On this day, I see clear. You're listening to the Security VIP Podcast, hosted by Taylor May, the official podcast of the security industry and home of nothing but the truth. Today on Security VIP, we feature security professional and expert Antoinette King. Get ready for nothing but the truth.
Security VIP Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Security VIP Podcast, the official podcast of the security industry and your home for nothing but the truth. As always, I'm your host, Taylor May. And on today's episode, we're sitting down with security professional and expert Antoinette King. Antoinette, welcome to the podcast today. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Super excited to have you. I know it's been a while since you last spoke, but obviously your name's been kicked around quite a bit here in the industry, and I would love to get more background about yourself, kind of your experience, and kind of what you bring to the table. Would love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. So first and foremost, I don't know if you can hear the roosters in the background, but I do live in rural New York, so I apologize for that in advance. It always adds a little extra comedic relief. But my name is Antoinette King. Currently, I'm a key account manager at Access Communications. I have just over 21 years of experience in the industry. And I think what makes my journey a little bit different than many other people, men and women in the industry, is that I came into the industry by design. So I went to school originally for criminal justice. I was thinking maybe going into law enforcement or FBI, and the local state college in my area on Long Island came up with this program called Managing Security Systems. And the chairperson from the criminal justice department tapped me on the shoulders and he said, "Hey, you might be interested in this." And at the time I had already transferred to, after my 2-year degree of criminal justice, I went to John Jay for forensic psychology. So I'm like, it's closer to home. I don't have to take a train into the city. Why not? I'll try it. So I ended up getting my degree. I was one of the first graduating class of that degree, and then started teaching as an adjunct right after, because it was such a new program. They didn't even have instructors really to fill a lot of the roles. So at the time, that same person that tapped me on the shoulder, he said, "Hey, there's going to be this convergence of IT and security. And in order for you to be more marketable, you should probably get some computer background." And he couldn't have been more insightful. He was like a little guru at the time, because it was the late 90s and nothing, everything was analog at the time. So I went for my MCSC back when Windows NT was the operating system of choice. I don't even know if you were alive. And maybe you were an infant at that time.
Well, before my time. Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. And I got my A+ certification because he said, again, super insightful and amazing mentor. He said, there are software people and there are hardware people, but in security, you're going to need to be both. So I got my A+ certification, was able to take computers apart, put them back together, and then the Microsoft certification. And I got my first job as a technician in the industry not because of my degree, but because of my networking capabilities. So they hired me because they didn't know how to put stuff on the internet, didn't know anything about servers. So I started the first 4.5 years of my career as a tech. And then I got pregnant. I was on a ladder at the Statue of Liberty. I'll never forget it. I was like 6 months pregnant. And one of the National Parks police guys is looking at me like fixing something on a rack or something. And he was like, "I think it's time to hang up the tool belt," because it didn't fit anymore. So it was kind of hanging off the side of the ladder. And that was hard, because it's my favorite thing to do, to put things together, put systems together and watch it come to life. So kind of ended up navigating in the industry through a couple of different roles, everything from operations, all within the security integration side of things, operations, inside sales, outside sales, support, building out service teams. And then 4 years ago, I was sitting on a trip that I had won from the company I was with, and I got a call from Access, and when they call, you answer. So here I am. I started as a regional sales manager for them, and then became a key account manager. So that's kind of the 10-cent tour of my journey.
It's really incredible, because there's not a lot of people like you that can bring that different perspective from just an IT centric background to like a SaaS background now to a technical background. And it's crazy because I've only been in the industry for 7 years, but to hear your background, your experience, you got into the weeds of it. You probably pulled cable, for a couple of years. You did the bread and butter of what this industry on the backbone, and that's really a really good skill set too, because it allows you to kind of expand and kind of nurture people as we move forward here. So, Anthony, I got to ask you, with all that, with everything you said, all that credibility experience, what's the biggest change though from day one on the job of this industry to where you are now? You mentioned analog, right? We've definitely grown, I think, from analog, but what's the biggest change besides that, kind of that evolution for you?
Well, I think for me, what I recognized a few years back is, we did have that I call it first phase convergence, where we had analog technology and then we started putting things on networks. And I feel like right now, maybe the last 5 to 10 years, we've entered this second phase of convergence, which is cybersecurity and data privacy, and how that affects the jobs that we do and the work that we do as physical security professionals. And that convergence of cyber and physical, where there needs to be an adoption of a more holistic security philosophy versus, we're the physical security people and these are the IT infosec, cyber security people. We've always, I will include myself in this group, the way that our answer for decades to cybersecurity or IT security or infosec was microsegmentation. We're going to just build our own network. We're going to just forget about the IT people. We'll build our own network. We'll put our stuff on our own technology infrastructure and we'll just do it ourselves. Right. Because I recognized this tremendous gap of knowledge and insight, I ended up going back to school and got my master's. I'm just actually graduating my master's in cybersecurity policy and risk analysis, because I recognized that we need more thought leadership on this side, where instead of it's an us against them mentality, we have to find some synergy and be able to have conversations and demystify cybersecurity so that physical security professionals don't feel like overwhelmed, because it feels overwhelming. But if you really peel back the onion, it's the same concepts. It's, that concentric circles of protection, and what's your asset, and then how do we create layers to harden the target. We've been doing this for decades. And so I want to kind of enlighten people in our industry to say, hey, I understand that. Maybe the controls are different and there's some new technology that we have to learn about. But at the end of the day, the security is security.
No, 100% incredible. I mean, I like to make the correlation too, because everything you just said kind of correlates to kind of what we're going through right now in the industry with AI, computer vision technology. It's a new emerging space, and cybersecurity, I think, has always been it's been overlooked too, and not a lot of people have the expertise. And just like you said, people try to do it themselves, but that doesn't mean they're doing it the right way too. And the same thing with AI and computer vision is, people that do these open source models, doesn't always work in a real world environment. It takes the right expertise and the right thought leaders in the space. And going off of that, Axis is definitely lucky to have you, first of all, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm a huge fan of Axis. I've got P3245 cameras on my house. So I'm bought into Axis, but they're very lucky to have you. But kind of moving on from that, I want to talk about this too. And the reason why I had you on my podcast in the beginning is because I don't have a lot of females with your credibility in my space. And I think it's more important for females like yourself to kind of promote awareness to kind of your knowledge of what females can bring to this industry. I'm a huge fan of women and successful females in this space, first of all. So how do we get more people like you, Antoinette, into this space? And how do we nurture them more in the industry?
I think the nurturing piece is you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I said, I've always, up until probably 5 years ago, where LinkedIn started becoming a bigger space for us as professionals. And even at Axis, I was truly encouraged to get involved in industry associations. So up until that point, traditionally, I was the only woman in the room. And especially as a female technician, sometimes it was like a record scratch when I would walk onto a job site with, my work boots and my ladder over my shoulder. And it was challenging, but I never felt like I didn't belong. I just kind of did my thing. I'm one of, again, very lucky people that even though I grew up in a traditional Italian household, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad worked in the auto body industry. There were never gender roles for us. So it was never a thing for me to think, oh, I can't do this. My dad, when back in the 80s, he bought an Atari computer and we wanted to play games. And he said to my sister and I, older sister, younger brother, and he said, hey, like, you want those games? I'm not paying for it, because he worked in auto body, he's blue collar worker. Here's a book. And he went to Radio Shack and he bought a spiral bound book that was probably, I don't know, 10 inches thick. And we had to code our own game. So if we wanted to play Frogger and Pong and all these games, we just entered the code in. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, okay, Dad. And like, so he spent the $25 on this book and we would thumb through, figure out what games we want to play. And then we'd save it on a cassette tape. At the time, it didn't occur to me that because I was a girl, I couldn't do that. I think the nurturing piece of it, where there is no gender roles, right? We shouldn't just be hiring females in our industry for the traditional marketing roles, finance roles. We should be, hiring women who have kind of out of the box thinking and put them into more technical roles that maybe they didn't even realize that, that they'd be good at. I feel like we need to do it at a young age. And I think that for me, I never thought about being in the forefront or like speaking out when I was younger in this industry. I never thought that I had something people wanted to hear. I had a lot of really amazing male mentors that encouraged me to grow and do, but never like up until the last 4 years, nobody ever pushed me into the spotlight. Like, hey, we need more people like you. So representation is really, really important. And now that I've kind of found my voice and I realize that all of this experience has some sort of value, I'm super excited to see that like SIA, for example, the Women in Security Forum and the Rise, Accelerize organization, they are really taking the young professional field by storm. And there are so many incredible young women right now that are in our industry that have, 5 to 7 years of experience or less. And they just naturally are falling into cadence to have a voice and to be involved and be on panels. And there are more men, I believe, that are in support of this. There are countless, and I'm not going to start naming because I know I'll forget somebody, but they know who they are, that are champions for women in our industry. And, you reached out to me months ago. For the record, it's just been a scheduling thing, but you reached out to me with that exact thing in mind. I want to have more women on my show. Let's have a conversation about this. That's the only thing that's going to continue to spread the word. I think it is far better now than it's ever been. I know we do have a long way to go. And I do believe in a lot of organizations, there still is a microculture of, machismo where women get to a certain level and then you don't see many women in that executive management team. So that's my push, is to bring awareness for that, because it's great in the, mid-management, it's great to have diversity, but it's really important to have diversity at the executive level team, because don't have that diversity of thought at that high level, then it really never trickles down to the organization.
Nothing but the truth. I mean, this is exactly why I wanted you to have on the podcast, because Antoinette, I have to tell you, I've had a lot of mentors in my life too. A lot of leaders in my life that I looked up to, but they were all male, and I never had a female leader in the space. But what's surprising about this industry is even some of my male leaders or mentors that I thought at the time, like what you just told me, like they were just like no comparison. It's like, and that's the thing. It's like, who cares if you're a male or a female? Let's just give an opportunity. There shouldn't be a gender classification that fits better in this role or that role. The idea is just to get more spotlight on females, just as you, to get more involved in the space. So what's the recommendation there for young females in this space? Is it involvement to get in these programs like SIA and Rise? Or is it getting certain focus groups? What's the recommendation there?
I highly recommend that if this is your passion, if this is the industry that you want to grow and build a career in, get involved in the industry associations for a couple of reasons. Number one, I believe the people that are working in those organizations are the ones that are trying to move the needle. They're trying to do the work. They're talking the talk and they're walking the walk, versus people who are just collecting a paycheck at a company to collect a paycheck. Like most of the people that are involved in the industry associations are very, very passionate about what we do as an industry. So you want to surround yourself naturally just with people that are going to lift you up and help you to see things differently and try to be better and grow. So I absolutely agree. I think that that's one thing. The other thing is advice to my younger self is to speak up and put yourself out there. You and I had a really good conversation a couple of months ago about, this feeling like what you felt like, well, what can I do more? I'm trying and I can't do more. And I think part of the reason that we have a little bit of this disparity is a lot of women don't feel comfortable putting themselves out there. So if positions become available and organizations don't have enough female applicants, how do you fill the positions with female applicants if you're not getting female applicants? So we have to take a little bit of the accountability on ourselves to put ourselves out there. Are you going to win every time? Absolutely not. Nobody does. But you don't know until you put yourself out there. I'd like to share a personal story that I had a couple of years ago. I had a male colleague tap me on the shoulder. Actually, that's not true. I reached out to a male colleague in a leadership position, and I said, this is kind of the roadmap that I'm looking to go down. What do I do? And so he was amazing. We spent an hour and a half on the phone, and he was telling me about a role that he was thinking about creating. I got really excited about the role. And he didn't directly say to me, I want you to do this role, but he was priming me to see if I was interested in it. And I really was. So the role comes out a couple of months later, and I reach out to an HR professional and I say, I'm interested in the role. And she inadvertently said to me, well, you right now have a regional position. We're looking for somebody with more national exposure. But she didn't tell me not to apply for it. But right. She kind of made me feel like I didn't have the skill set to do the job.
Or you weren't good enough, for that role. Yeah.
So I didn't apply for it. And a male colleague got the job with the same exact job title that I had at the time.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
But I am going to take responsibility for that because I didn't apply. So I took what she said, I internalized it. And I think this is the difference between men and women's brains and the way our brains work. She didn't intend to make me feel like I wasn't qualified. She just made a statement. I internalized it, felt like I didn't have national exposure at the time. And then I didn't apply for the job. So this other male colleague gets the job. I'm frustrated now because I was like,
I would be pissed off.
I was pissed. I was like, are you kidding me? Some other expletives came out because I'm from New York. I could have done that job. And I feel like personally, based on my history, my experience, I could have done a better job.
Yeah.
But I take ownership for that because I didn't apply for it. Fast forward 2 years later, and I'm on a call with that same original individual, that executive person, and we were talking about something else. And he asked me, he's like, I was curious. I thought you were super jazzed about that role, but you never applied for it. So I shared my experience, and he literally went like this. He put his head in his hands and he said, here I was trying to make my team more diverse. I was hoping you'd apply for it because I really thought you were qualified for it. And you happen to help my team be more diverse. And then somebody's comment dissuaded you. And he apologized. And I was like, it's not your fault. But he kind of said to me, you know what? I should have reached out to you during that process to ask you why you hadn't applied. The lesson that I learned from that, and that's my adult self, right? That wasn't my young self. That was my adult self feeling these insecurities. Right. So my lesson to that is I stopped not putting myself out. Now I think I overly put myself out there because I do think that I have value, and I do think that my experience and my education brings something to the table. And I won't ever allow someone else's comments or, influence make the determination whether or not I'm going to go after something or go after my dream. And the other lesson learned was when she said to me I didn't have national exposure, that just drove me to get more involved. And the last 2 years, that's what I did. So like I giggle when you say, oh, your name's been kicked around all over the place. I did that. I created that reality for myself because in my head, it was like, well, if you don't have the national exposure, then you can't do your job properly. So then I started becoming a voice for cyber in our industry.
I think the biggest recommendation there for young females is you have to be bold. You have to be brave. You got to put yourself out there. And that's a phenomenal story there because it speaks volumes of where we're heading, I think, further here in the industry. And we talk about diversity. We talk about inclusion. I know you saw a couple months ago, my podcast got called out because of the logo behind me with the suit and tie, which is fine. But the story of the matter is, I'm a big advocate for females. I think everyone knows that now. I've made my voice clear, and maybe I needed to get called out because I needed to project that further. Maybe I haven't done a very good job of communicating that to the industry, which is fine. But the same point and concept, I don't want people to like associate a logo based on what I believe here in the industry, right, or what we should do here in the industry. So I think that's a recommendation for my listeners and followers moving forward. But Antoinette, that's a great story. You mentioned some of those challenges too. I guarantee if you would have applied for that role, you probably would have got the job. You probably would have
I after talking to the hiring manager, yeah, I know I would have gotten that job.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer the universe kind of puts obstacles in our way in order for us to grow and to kind of push us into the direction that we're supposed to be. So it wasn't meant to be. And I hold no negative feelings towards the person that got the role, because he's doing a fantastic job in the role. It was something I needed to learn about myself. I had to have that happen in order to grow.
Aside from those challenges that you mentioned, aside from maybe lack of awareness or not putting much more emphasis on, females in executive roles, what other challenges do you see or foresee happening right now with females in this space, or how can we help further you guys in the industry?
That's a tough one. Compared to what it used to be, it is so much better. I think the challenge is having more representation. Like, it's a catch-22, right? You want representation. My son told me this a couple of months ago, and it's been resonating with me a lot. And it's not just about gender. It's about age. It's about ethnicity. It's about, sexual preference. Like, if you don't see someone like you doing something that you want to do, then it's harder for you to see yourself in that position. So there has to be the firsts, right? And we're seeing that now. We're starting to see the flywheel start to build up some momentum. The challenge is the firsts, getting more female executives into positions that are technical. We've got a ton of really talented females in, HR executive positions and marketing executive positions, which are very, very important roles. So I'm not detracting from those roles. The difference is we don't see as many executive females in the technical side of things and even in the sales side of things. So that's important, is getting those firsts set up so that other younger women or other women that are in the same positions even see that, oh, that's capable. I can do that because she did it.
Yeah, some names that come to my mind that I've gotten to know the last 6-7 years. Kim Loy of Acre. I mean, she's chief product officer, right? She sits on the board of SIA, but she's in a technical role. That's a technical executive position, and it's phenomenal to hear her speak. I know she just got recognized for a top award for D&I. Kelly Shanks at Convergent, a top account executive. She kicks ass. She sells like $15-20 million a year for Convergent. She's phenomenal to speak with, and obviously yourself as well. So, moving on from here, I know you've done some phenomenal things at Access. We could talk further about Access if you'd like, but what's the overall legacy, Antoinette, that you want to leave here in the industry? I know you're still young. I'm not saying you're going to get out of the industry anytime soon. You're very young. I'm just saying, what's the message and legacy you want to leave here when that day does come?
For me, my passion, everybody knows it, is data privacy, cybersecurity. I'm concerned for our industry and the direction that our industry is going because of the lack of fulfilling our requirements in holistic security, right? And understanding what that means. So I hope that my legacy is to be someone who is the voice of this concept of holistic security, where we are thinking about everything from infrastructure to endpoint and everything in between, right? And we take some of the accountability and responsibility because I believe that cybersecurity is national security at this point. And every organization plays a role, the small mom and pops all the way to the large enterprise, and the individuals who are working for those organizations also all play a role. And so I feel like bringing awareness and education and training to how do we live as digital citizens so that we can better our national security. And I know it sounds really like, holy crap, but that's how I feel. It's that important to me. Teaching young people about cyber hygiene and how to protect themselves will set up the best practices so that when they become an employee for an organization, it's already second nature to them. For us older people, it's hard. It's a challenge because, like I said before, our industry kind of cut our teeth on if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right. And we're just going to build our own infrastructure so we don't have to worry about any of the things that IT puts up as a roadblock. For me, IT, cybersecurity, InfoSec, and physical security should be the guide rails by which all business is done. we should no longer be roadblocks.
You should be able to interoperate between those two. I mean, it's all about that open feel, that open community that we always talk about, right? That those box sales that have been in our industry for so long. I talked to Brian Carpenter. You might not know him, but he works with Pivot SaaS. He always talked about the dying dinosaur with integrators because they're so used to that project-based selling kind of approach. And just like you said, those guardrails are cybersecurity versus physical security. If we can able to interoperate technologies and products and kind of that open ecosystem feel, it's going to be more of a proactive, holistic approach for our customers moving forward. So I love to hear that. And Anthony, any exciting news that you can share coming up, maybe in a couple months or weeks, or is it still premature right now?
It's a little premature. We'll have to do that in another one, but I am excited. I just, so I'm graduating with my master's degree, finished all the program, but graduation's in a couple of weeks. So I'm super stoked about that. And I actually just finished, I'm one of the first people who are certified through the Association of Data and Cyber Governance with the Data Privacy Protection Specialist certification. So I added a few acronyms, a few letters after my name and another few. So I'm super excited about that. There are big things to come, but I'm hoping to see some of my virtual friends from COVID at ISC West. So I will be there. If you're going to be at ISC, please make sure you let me know. Look up on LinkedIn. We'll have some drinks.
Awesome. Yes, of course. That sounds awesome. And congratulations on your recent accolades, recent achievement.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Building that resume always, right? You always get
Yep. I'm a lifelong learner. My husband's like, the ink barely dried on the diploma. You're already going for more things. And I was like, it's just the way I am. I can't help it.
And if people want to get more in contact with you, Antoinette, what's a good contact email and a phone number, or how can they speak with you further?
Sure. So LinkedIn is the best. Just look me up on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn /Antoinette King -PSP, I believe. And we'll hook up there.
Awesome, Antoinette. Well, thank you again for taking the time today. We'll have you back on an episode shortly. I will be at IC West as well, so of course we're gonna have to sync up and have a couple of drinks together and hang out. But for those listening and those that want to learn more about my podcast series, you can email me at info@securityvip.net. Once again, that's info@securityvip.net. You can watch this episode of Antoinette and I on YouTube, listen to us on Spotify, and make sure you stay connected on LinkedIn. Stay tuned for the next episode release, guys. Stay safe.
Gotta recognize you want